This story by the New York Times reflects how recent events have endangered aspects of American democracy. Throughout this interactive article, the author describes how disproportionately represented areas can influence certain outcomes that the general public may not agree with, and that election denial has put a strain on a traditionally democratic system. Throughout this, we'll see visual and audio aids that can help enhance this interactive article. This story uses pictures as a primary means of a visual guide. This article uses pictures to stimulate feelings of American democracy and patriotism. The first picture of the flag promotes a sense of patriotism. The Capitol riot shows an immediate imagery of threatened democracy in modern America. The voting booths are considered a shrine of American democracy that need protected. And the upside-down flag at a protest can be a symbol of distress. The Trump won banner is a sign of election denial, and the Capitol is where many decisions are made for our democracy. Audio can be a great help to those who like listening to audio more than reading. As we have known in recent history, podcasts have become a more important feature of how people absorb information. The New York Times has used this simple form of media as a tool for their good story. This allows for a multi-platform platform for communication, and this can also be helpful for a more blind audience as well. Text is a foundation of a good story. Without an easy-to-read text, this story would not get good traction. Another important part of the good text in itself is size and spacing. Having a good size with enough spacing in between can allow a reader to pause and come back easily while remembering important information. A story this multifaceted also has good organization, as it covers many subjects throughout its themes. The infographic is also a good visual tool that relays important data. In this infographic, it shows where certain states have had their voter margins since 1988. The purpose of this information is to show how more urban states have remained on one side of the political aisle, while states with a more rural population have stayed on the other side in recent elections. While the urban population in America is slightly bigger than the rural, there are more states that have a rural population, which can skew how both the Senate and Electoral College are laid out. As shown in 2016, even when the popular vote was geared toward one specific candidate, the Electoral College has voted differently. This, in the article, explains how maybe parts of democracy may not be fairly represented. This map is another form of visuals that can relay information. This map shows certain shaded squares. They have a voter margin of above 50%. This can show that certain areas might be gerrymandered to one party, so that another party can have better odds in the majority of the seats. This is known as packing. Packing is when you put one category of voters into a certain area and divide the rest into areas that are more easily won by the other party. Both parties have had records of doing this, and that might be a threat to democracy as well. Data visualization is much easier to read than traditional paragraphs. The data shown in this article has three purposes. The first is to show how misrepresentation affects different states when it comes to the Senate. The second graph can show which Supreme Court justices were nominated at which times and by which president. And the third graph that will come up will show the percentage of Republicans and state legislators that are engaged in misinformation in the 2020 election and have used certain tools to try to mitigate the effects that they didn't want, which can also be a threat to democracy in itself. Now, it all comes together with the photos, the data visualization, the infographics, and the map, which gives a visual representation of what the story is telling. And the text itself lays out the foundation of the story being told. An easy-to-read text is an easily read story. And the audio itself is also an assistant to those who prefer listening over reading, and can also be a tool for the blind to gather the information that they wouldn't be able to read in the first place. Overall, all this information together makes a good story. One recommendation I do have for this is to promote the idea of a video, the visual and audio in helping absorb information together. While text itself can help with information, video can offer a slower paced and a simpler version of this story, and can attract more viewers to a story people may not want to read themselves. As I said before, podcasting has become more popular because of this very fact that some people prefer more of an audio tune than a simple reading. For presentation ideas, I believe that for our bowling project, having an audio file that can simplify our collected information can also help people who appreciate an audio direction more than a reading one, and that can help engage with our story. And in terms of engagement, I believe that using a helpful infographic can help people read our information easily and will allow more visual learners themselves to absorb our information more clearly than they would in a traditional paragraph. Now, I chose this certain article because I am interested in political conversation, and seeing an interactive story like this is interesting to me. I can also see us using some of these techniques, like the infographic and the audio, in our own project, and they made the story more engaging in this article, so I believe that will also help with our story as well. I believe that my combined interest in politics and seeing storytelling techniques like this made this presentation interesting to me.